All right, hello, you guys. We are going to be reteaching today. I noticed that we were stuck on a couple of ideas and concepts when we were solving these equations with grouping symbols. So, lesson 18, session 3, reteaching. We had the same problem. We changed a couple things though. So, Hugo still travels to Toronto, Canada. His weather app shows that the temperature is 28 degrees Celsius. Hugo writes the equation 28 is equal to 4 with parentheses F minus 32 right down here to find the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit with F. What is the temperature in degrees Fahrenheit? So we're still using our same equation, but wanted to go over something first. And that was something called inverse. We've been doing these since the beginning of the year. Since the beginning of our anchor charts. So if you ever notice, whenever we had an anchor chart, 1, 1, 1, we would be doing the inverse constantly. So it means that we're referring to do the opposite of another operation. So if we have adding, we are subtracting. If we are subtracting, then we add. If we multiply, we are dividing to cancel it out. And we divide when we're multiplying. So we're doing the opposite of another operation. Here's an example. We always would cross out one of the ones here. Notice we're subtracting. This is a positive one. We're subtracting one. Notice that we're doing the inverse. This was a positive one. This was minus. In order to cancel it out, we want to do the inverse. So -1 on both sides. Okay. So we have here our first expression. We have 28 is equal to 4 with parentheses. This 4 is in a group, what's it called again? A grouping symbol. Grouping symbols. It's part of these grouping symbols over here. This 4 is being multiplied to this whole thing, to the parentheses F minus 32. We need to get rid of that 4. So we need to find the inverse of that. So the inverse of multiplying by 4 is the opposite, which is dividing by 4. The inverse of multiplying by 4 is dividing by 4. So I'm going to divide by 4. I'll put a little line there. Oop. And remember, this is an anchor chart, so you have to do it to both sides. Divide by 4 on both sides, just like we do for all anchor charts to make them equal on each or stay equal. So the 4's cancel out because they turn into 1. That's what the inverse does. It turns it into 1. And then something that I noticed that a lot of us were not doing. So once we solve these problems, we need to bring everything down. Like everything has to be brought down. So 28 divided by 4, that is 7, the equal sign. And then we have F minus 32. There you go, F minus 32. Now we can continue here, and we're continuing to do the inverse. So what number minus 32 is 7? Well, I know that it's minus 32 on this side, so if I do the inverse, I could figure out what the opposite is. So the inverse of negative 32 is adding 32. Boom, there it is adding 32. So we have F is equal to 39 degrees. Notice these inverses, these aren't a surprise. We've been working on these. We've been working on this since the beginning of equations. Oh, mister, this is times 4. I could divide this side by 4. Yeah, that's an inverse. Oh, over here, it's minus 32. So if I add 32 to this side, it'll give me the answer for F. Yeah, absolutely. It would give you 39. You've been doing the inverse this whole time. So now let's write our sentences always. The, what was it? The temperature in degrees Fahrenheit is 39 degrees. That is ridiculously high. I think that might be like 115 degrees. Wow. Now, let's discuss this. How did you identify which inverse to use in each step? How did we know which inverse to use here? How did we know? Pause the video, see if you can answer this question. How did we know for the purple side? How did we know that we needed to add by 32? How did we know we needed to divide by 4 in the first one? Well, if you look carefully, hopefully you did, and now you're going to be checking it. We're multiplying by 4. So the opposite is dividing by 4 because inverses cancel each other out. And then that's why you divide by 4 on this side. Same thing here. Minus 32. I know that I have to add by 32 because that's the opposite. Minus 32, the opposite of it is plus 32. And that's why it cancels. And that's why we added 32 to the other side as well. Yeah. Remember, pause the video, rewind if you got confused, and then we'll go from there. Looking at the try it, this one, the one we just did right now, or you just did right now, what would change if the equation was 28 equals 1/4? Before it was a 4. Now it's 1/4 with f minus 32. What would change if the equation was this? And why? Have a little, pause the video, see if you can think about it. Here's your sentence starter. If 4 changed to a 1/4 here, the equation would, what would happen to the equation? And remember to say your vocab words, especially the vocab words we just learned, talking about inverses. Don't forget to mention that. Use your vocabulary. All right, let's go. So we have 28 equals 1/4 f minus 32. So it would have the inverse be multiplying by 4. In the other one, we were dividing by 4, but notice this is a fraction. You're already dividing, so that means that you do the opposite, times 4. Oops. You're going to do times 4. Have the inverse be multiplied by 4. So instead of multiplying, oh, wait. Instead of dividing, sorry, custodians here. Instead of dividing by 4, you will be multiplying by 4. Instead of dividing 28 by 4, you instead will be multiplying 28 by 4. There you go. All the other steps remain the same. You're still going to add by 32 to the other side at the end, but that's the main change. The inverse changes if you make this into a fraction because you're dividing by 4. 1/4 is division. 1 divided by 4. All right, guys. Have a good one. Pause the video, rewind it, fast forward, ask questions. As always, I'm here.